In the southern corner of the small town of Willow Creek, Georgia, where old oak trees cast their shade over narrow cobblestone streets, stood a rundown rental complex the locals still called the Workers' Quarter. In the modest apartment 3C, with peeling brick walls and windows covered only by thin fabric curtains, lived the Harper mother and daughter. Olivia Harper, only 26 years old, already bore on her youthful face the weariness etched by years of struggling to make ends meet. She became pregnant with Emily when she was just 14. Her boyfriend left upon hearing the news. Olivia gave birth alone, abandoning her dream of studying tailoring at vocational school, and took a job as an assistant seamstress at a small tailor shop on Jefferson Street. Emily, her 12-year-old daughter, was her entire world. Despite their hardships, Emily was always obedient, studious, and kind. Every morning before school, she helped her mother organize the fabric scraps and gather leftover threads. In her big round brown eyes always sparkled small joys, though life was far from easy. The old clock chimed 5 a.m. Olivia gently pulled the blanket over her daughter and tiptoed out of bed. She quickly made a weak cup of coffee and grabbed the small lunchbox she had prepared the night before. Each day, she worked 10 hours at the tailor shop to earn just enough for rent, electricity, school fees, and a few simple meals for the two of them. That morning, like every morning, Emily put on her old uniform, which her mother had mended several times. The white shirt had begun to yellow slightly, and the stitching at the cuffs was uneven, but it was neatly ironed. Olivia gently smoothed her daughter's hair and smiled softly. "My girl is the most beautiful at school again today." Emily smiled, a small dimple appearing on her cheek. "You're just saying that to make me feel better, Mom," she said shyly. "I mean it. No dress is more beautiful than your smile." The two embraced. A brief hug before stepping out of their small room. At school, Emily was always a hard-working student, but she was also the target of teasing from a few girls in her class. Their expensive dresses, shiny new shoes, and branded backpacks only made Emily's simplicity stand out even more. "Look, it's the girl with the patched-up dress again," a whisper came from the corner of the class. "Her mom probably made just an old dress made from scraps," another giggled. Emily heard it but lowered her head, pretending not to care. She was used to such comments. But deep inside, small wounds remained, like a gentle breeze rippling across a lake, leaving tiny waves that never quite faded. That day, the school announced the most important event of the year: the Willow Creek Spring Ball. Something every middle school student eagerly awaited. Sparkling invitations were handed to each student, with neatly written words. "Get ready for your night to shine." Emily's classmates immediately buzzed about their newly ordered gowns from Atlanta, glittering high heels, and even the hairstyles they would curl for that night. But Emily quietly held the invitation, feeling as though it grew heavier in her hands. That evening, when Olivia returned from work, she noticed her daughter's pensive gaze while studying. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Olivia asked gently. Emily hesitated for a moment before softly replying, "There's going to be a ball at school, Mom, but probably won't go." Olivia sat down beside her, gently stroking her back. "Why not? Every 12-year-old girl deserves to have fun." Emily bit her lower lip and mumbled, "Because I don't have a nice dress like the others. They're all getting new dresses made in the city. I don't want anyone to laugh at me, Mom." Olivia looked at her daughter, her heart tightening. Those sparkling brown eyes were full of small dreams and wounds from the scornful glances of her peers. She took a deep breath and smiled gently. "My sweet girl, leave the dress to me. On that night, you'll be the most beautiful girl there." Emily looked up at her mother, her eyes shimmering with a hint of doubt but also igniting a small spark of hope. She hugged her mother tightly. "Thank you, Mom." Within Olivia's heart, a quiet plan was already forming. She would sew her daughter a dress from all the fabric scraps she had been quietly collecting for months, because for Olivia, nothing was more beautiful than the joyful eyes of her little girl in a world full of hardships. After Emily went to sleep, Olivia sat quietly by the small wooden table next to the window. The dim yellow light from the old oil lamp cast a glow on her youthful yet worried face. On the table, she spread out the colorful fabric scraps of various sizes she had been collecting for nearly a year. Each piece carried a small story, some leftover lace from a wedding gown she had once sewn for a customer, a few strips of chiffon from a defective evening dress, and some crumpled silk that others had discarded. Olivia gently ran her fingers over each piece as if caressing memories. She closed her eyes and envisioned the dress in her mind. Not as lavish as the expensive dresses from the boutiques, but beautiful enough for her daughter to walk into the ball with confidence. A dress from the heart, born from a mother's love for her little girl. The next day, Olivia asked her shop owner for extra shifts. Every bit of extra income was precious for her secret plan. Some days, she worked until nearly midnight before returning to their small apartment. Exhausted, yet the thought of Emily's radiant smile gave her strength to keep going. Each night, after Emily had fallen into deep sleep, Olivia quietly brought out the old mini sewing machine, adjusted each stitch, and carefully sewed every straight seam. Her hands skillfully pieced together the scraps like a silk patchwork painting. Though the fabrics didn't match, their harmonious combination created a rustic yet elegant charm. On some nights, Emily would wake, peeking through half-closed eyes, to see her mother sewing under the dim light. The little girl smiled softly, pretending to close her eyes again, not wanting to disturb the quiet moment. A complex emotion welled up inside Emily. Not just happiness, but a deep gratitude. She knew that each stitch represented her mother's sweat and countless sleepless nights devoted entirely to her. A few days later, when the dress was nearly complete, Olivia carefully added small white lace flowers along the bodice, then delicately hand-stitched tiny buttons down the back with pale cream thread. Everything wasn't perfect like the gowns in luxury stores, but it embodied a refined love and skill that only a young mother's boundless devotion could create. That Saturday afternoon, Olivia gently called Emily over, holding the newly finished dress in her hands, her eyes sparkling like flickering candlelight. "My dear, try this dress on." Emily looked at the dress, her small hands trembling with emotion. She stepped forward, softly touching the smooth fabric, feeling each humble seam her mother had lovingly stitched night after night. "It's so beautiful, Mom." Her voice nearly broke. Olivia gently slipped the dress onto her daughter. It fit perfectly, the skirt flaring slightly like a flower petal, with the carefully blended silk pieces creating a uniquely captivating shade. Emily twirled lightly, the skirt spinning under the golden sunlight streaming through the window, making the dress shimmer as if covered in magical light. "You might be the best seamstress in the world, Mom." Emily beamed. Olivia hugged her daughter close and whispered softly in her ear, "No, sweetheart, I'm just lucky to have the most deserving little girl to wear this dress." The two held each other for a long time, letting the evening sunlight scatter across the remaining loose threads and the quiet tears falling, full of love. That night, after Emily had fallen asleep, Olivia sat alone by the window, gazing at the peaceful night sky. In that still moment, she whispered a prayer. "Please let her have a beautiful night. Just one night so she'll know that in this world, every dream deserves to bloom." Less than a week remained before the ball, and Olivia knew that all her efforts had now been poured into this one night. The night when Emily would step into the hall in the dress sewn from her mother's love, ready to face the stares, the whispers, and above all, ready to shine. The night of the ball had finally arrived. The entire town of Willow Creek was bustling with excitement. Sleek cars of wealthy families lined up outside the local high school auditorium. Parents adjusted their ties while young girls chattered, excitedly showing off their newest gowns, most of which had been custom-made at famous boutiques in Atlanta or Savannah. In the tiny room of the Harper household, the soft glow of the table lamp illuminated the special dress hanging neatly on a wooden hanger. Olivia gently tied Emily's soft brown hair into a simple low bun. She had been trimming that hair herself for 12 years, ever since Emily was born. Emily's naturally fair skin glowed under the light, without the heavy makeup worn by her peers, yet radiating a rustic, pure beauty. The dress, with its softly flared skirt like a wildflower's petal, was skillfully pieced together by Olivia from gentle pastel fabrics. Along the bodice, delicate lacework intertwined gracefully, striking, yet tender. When Emily spun gently, the skirt swirled like the early spring breeze across the rural fields of Georgia. I look beautiful, don't I, Mom? Emily asked shyly, her eyes searching for confidence in her mother's gaze. Olivia smiled, placing her hands gently on her daughter's cheeks. You look beautiful, Emily. You don't need a lavish gown or dazzling lights to shine. You are the light tonight. At the entrance of the auditorium, as Olivia led Emily inside, eyes immediately turned toward the two of them. Several of Emily's classmates whispered, their glances a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Oh, look, homemade dress. Looks like something straight out of a flea market. Amanda, a wealthy classmate, giggled with her friends. Yeah, it looks like a Salvation Army dress. Another chimed in with laughter. Emily heard every word. Her tiny hands clenched slightly. Her heart sank for a brief moment. But then, her mother's voice echoed in her mind. No one can diminish your worth unless you allow them to. Emily lifted her head and smiled faintly. Though still unsteady inside, her gaze grew steadier. Inside the hall, crystal chandeliers hanging from the high ceiling cast shimmering light onto the polished wooden floor. Cheerful music filled the air. Pairs of boys and girls stepped onto the dance floor, swirling to classic ballads. From the corner of the hall, Olivia stood quietly, hands clasped tightly in front of her chest. She watched Emily's every step, unable to hide her blend of worry and pride. For her, each of Emily's steps tonight was a small victory over fate. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Across the room, a middle-aged woman with neatly cut silver hair and golden-rimmed glasses observed Emily closely. It was Margaret Whittaker, a once famous fashion designer who had retired and recently moved back to Willow Creek after many years away. She couldn't take her eyes off the special dress Emily was wearing. The delicate cuts, the pure color combinations, the rustic yet intentional lacework, all reminded her of her own early years, starting out with nothing but an old family sewing machine. After several silent minutes of observation, she gently lifted her cup of mint tea, smiled softly, and whispered to her assistant, "Now that is art from the heart. No brand name, no price tag, just love and skillful hands." She set her tea down, her gaze following Emily as the girl danced gracefully with a few boys from her class. Emily's gentle steps beat like a steady, pure rhythm, untouched by the surrounding whispers. That night's ball for Emily was both beautiful and challenging. She understood she was still a target for gossip. But far more important, she had dared to stand there, smiling, confidently wearing the dress her mother had lovingly made for her. And what Emily did not yet know was that her simplicity and purity had just begun to open an entirely new door of opportunity for her. The music drifted gently like a soft breeze through the glittering hall. Emily twirled gracefully across the dance floor, her dress fluttering like a thin butterfly beneath the crystal lights. Though the whispers still buzzed faintly in her ears, she had learned to smile calmly, as if every scornful word was nothing but a distant echo. In the corner of the room, Mrs. Margaret Whittaker continued to observe the girl with a curious and contemplative gaze. The keen eyes of a seasoned designer recognized that the dress Emily wore wasn't from any known brand. The stitches were even yet gentle, every detail revealing the hands of a dedicated seamstress, someone who understood that true beauty comes from sincere simplicity, not from price tags or luxury labels. As the music ended, Emily quietly stepped toward the refreshment table. From afar, Olivia kept her eyes on her daughter, her heart trembling with a mixture of worry and pride with every step Emily took. It was at that moment that Mrs. Margaret slowly approached the refreshment table, where Emily was adjusting the backstrap of her dress. Her voice was gentle, polite, yet warm. "Young lady, your dress is beautiful." Emily was slightly startled, turning to face the elderly woman smiling at her. The girl replied shyly, Thank you, ma'am." Mrs. Margaret tilted her head and smiled. "Did you make it yourself?" Blushing, Emily quickly shook her head. "No, ma'am, my mother made it for me." Mrs. Margaret nodded softly, her eyes sparkling with interest. In that gaze, she seemed to have already guessed much about the mother standing quietly in the corner of the hall. "Would you introduce me to your mother?" she asked gently. Emily blinked, a bit nervous, but politely nodded. "Yes, ma'am, my mom is over there." The two slowly walked toward Olivia. Seeing her daughter approaching with a stranger, Olivia instinctively clenched her hands, trying to remain composed. "Good evening." "I'm Margaret Whitaker," the woman said softly, extending her hand. Olivia, flustered but polite, shook her hand, her voice slightly trembling. "Good evening. I'm Olivia Harper. Very nice to meet you." Mrs. Margaret studied Olivia for a moment, observing her features, the calloused hands of a seamstress and the loving eyes that never strayed from her daughter. She spoke slowly. "I've been watching the dress your daughter is wearing all evening. If I may be honest, it's one of the most wonderful handmade dresses I've seen in many years." Olivia's eyes widened, flustered. "Oh, you're too kind. I'm really just a small-time seamstress. I simply tried my best for my daughter." Mrs. Margaret smiled kindly. "It's the simple and sincere things that touch others' hearts. You know, I was once the founder of Whitaker & Coyce, a fashion house in New York. I've retired now, but my trained eye still recognizes true talent." Olivia was nearly speechless, her hands instinctively twisting together in nervousness. "In fact," Mrs. Margaret continued, her eyes lighting up, "I've been planning to start a new fashion line right here in town, focusing on handcrafted evening gowns that embrace traditional elegance, something that's quickly disappearing in this industrialized age. And I believe you may be the collaborator I've been looking for." Both Olivia and Emily were stunned for a moment. An opportunity that seemed like something from a dream had suddenly appeared before them. Do you really think so?" Olivia stammered. Mrs. Margaret gently placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder, her voice full of certainty. "I don't just think so. I'm certain. Come to my small studio next week and we'll start with the first designs. But for now, let the two of you fully enjoy this beautiful evening." Olivia gripped Emily's hand tightly, tears shimmering under the hall's glittering lights. She could hardly believe that her humble dream was now opening before her, born from the very hands that once pieced together scraps of fabric in the quiet of the night. And Emily softly whispered in her mother's ear, "I told you. Mom, you are the best seamstress in the world." 1 week after the ball, Olivia tightly held Emily's small hand as the two walked through the iron gate, leading to a small workshop on the northern edge of Willow Creek. Once an abandoned sewing factory, it had now been transformed by Mrs. Margaret Whitaker into a simple yet cozy fashion studio. Morning sunlight streamed through the large glass windows, illuminating neatly stacked rolls of silk along the walls, mannequins standing in rows as if awaiting something new, and a wide cutting table in the center of the room, where all dreams would begin. Mrs. Margaret greeted the mother and daughter with a warm smile. "Welcome to the new home of skillful hands," she said with a hint of humor. Olivia was still slightly dazed, unable to believe she was standing inside her own dream. She hesitated. "Are you sure you want to work with me? I've never had formal training, never studied at any school." Mrs. Margaret smiled kindly, placing a gentle hand on Olivia's shoulder. "You possess something many formally trained designers can only dream of: sincerity, meticulousness, and love poured into every stitch. That is the true foundation of beauty." Emily stood beside them, her proud, sparkling eyes watching her mother. Her small hand gently squeezed Olivia's, as if passing her courage. In that moment, all the hardships, exhaustion, and lonely nights spent sewing beneath the dim oil lamp seemed to fade, making way for a new glimmer of hope. Time passed, and the first dresses in the collection heartstrings slowly took shape under Olivia's careful hands. Each gown carried its own unique style, simple yet elegant, blending Southern vintage charm with modern sophistication. News of the special workshop spread quickly throughout Willow Creek and soon beyond the town. Local newspapers praised Olivia's talent, while short interviews on regional television attracted customers from neighboring states. A small boutique opened right next to the studio, where for the first time, Olivia could place a simple wooden sign outside, hand-carved with the words Harper and Heartstrings, sewn with love. 3 years later, Emily was now a 15-year-old young lady, taller, more graceful, but her brown eyes still shimmered with the same humility as before. One late afternoon, after helping her mother organize newly delivered fabrics, Emily stood, gazing at the very first dress, the one her mother had sewn from scraps years ago, now displayed in a large glass frame at the center of the room. The old dress was no longer perfect. Some stitches had worn thin over the years. But to Emily, it would always be the most beautiful dress in her life. Olivia approached, gently placing an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "You still like looking at that dress, don't you?" Emily smiled softly, her voice as light as the breeze. "Because it reminds me of where everything began, Mom." The two stood silently, letting the golden sunset bathe the window frame. Years later still, when Emily had become a promising young designer, she was invited to a television interview in Atlanta. The host asked, "What or who has inspired you the most in your design career?" Without hesitation, Emily's sparkling eyes looked straight into the camera. "My mother." She paused, as if allowing her words to sink deeply into the quiet air. "When I was 12, my mother sewed me a dress from fabric scraps. That night, I didn't just wear a dress. I wore her love, her sacrifices, and her quiet faith. The dress wasn't perfect, but to me, it will always be the most beautiful in the world." Off-screen in the small living room back in Willow Creek, Olivia quietly watched her daughter on the old television screen, her eyes glistening but her smile radiant. She whispered softly, as if speaking to herself, "I need nothing more. Just seeing you happy like this is enough." Thus, the story of Emily and her young mother Olivia comes to a close, leaving us with a lingering sense of sacred motherhood and the power of simple dreams. Their story is not only a journey of overcoming poverty, but also a testament to the miraculous strength of love. Starting from seemingly worthless fabric scraps, they wove a beautiful and hopeful dream. In today's dazzling world, sometimes the simplest, most sincere things are the ones that truly touch our hearts. If this story made you smile, brought tears to your eyes, or simply warmed your heart, please consider giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and sharing the video with your loved ones. Your support will give us the motivation to continue telling these small but meaningful stories. We look forward to seeing you on the next journey.